it's narrow enough that you're usually not being able to ride side by side. So it's nothing that I feel like has to be practiced.
I had a couple people who contacted me. They said they loved how balanced your horses look, and also one of them was a farrier, and she wanted to know who did the hooves, which I'm assuming is you, right? And she wanted to know about your hoof care for Treasure, and just thought that she was really balanced.
Appreciate that. Treasure is actually shod kind of out of balance because she has really developed side bone and some osselets from the racetrack, which is a bony growth around the ligament on the fetlock on the outside. Mm-hmm. So I have to shoe her. I have to be really particular on how I shoe her so that she doesn't pronate very much and build pressure on the side of her hoof. She was in sneakers this year. I've tried Easy Care products, and I do in her rest period. I use them, and I barefoot her a lot. But when she's in heavy training, she needs more support. And because I have to flip her sideways, I need something to hold her hoof together because she will get distorted from that kind of, I trim more lateral or outside and leave almost every medial heel I can get because the way her foot wants to tweak. And I just need that angle so she doesn't pronate, which means hitting outside and collapsing to the inside. Mm-hmm. And that it just aggravates her side bone and her osselets. So, I'm passionate about all the stuff with the horses. So watching them travel, filming them regularly before I shoe them, and just watching how they stand.
Filming them like video, not X-ray.
Yeah, filming them. Yeah, I mean, occasionally we X-ray, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time I'm just filming. And I worked with a vet a long time ago, Jeannie Waldron, who helped me with all that. And she's like, just trust your eye. And now that we have iPhones and we can slow them down to like uber slow to see like every half, like little, you can do like by like 1/4-inch increments to see exactly how they're loading and whatnot.
Wow.
It makes it, I just like every aspect. And it's important for a horse like Treasure she has arthritis. She's had it since I got her as a 3-year-old, and I learned to develop and keep her comfortable around that. It was trying at times and difficult, but it was worth it. Yeah.
So one more point on training, because I re-listened to the interview with Heather that we did last year, and she talked about canter a lot, and that many horses that we see going down the trail, I believe, Heather, what you said was that they think of the canter as purely acceleration, but you want them to learn to kind of just live in that gait as a gait.
Yeah. And I think it's more common in regions that have a lot of hills. It's hard to get into the rhythm to train the horse to maintain the canter at an actual mile per hour. Like, this horse is going to hold 10 to 12 miles an hour, whatever is the comfortable speed for that horse, usually more closer to 12 miles an hour. But they're going to maintain like they would at a trot, just hold a steady gait rather than just accelerate until you're at full blast running. Because it is actual gait and endurance, depending on what region you're in, that might not be completely happening. On the flatter regions, I think the horses learn to get into that rhythm a little better and train and develop and learn how to canter at an actual pace rather than accelerating as much. But in the hills, it can be a little challenging because the horse is just seeing it as a way to get to the top of the hill and just runs up the hill. So, yeah, I think it is important for your horse to maintain an actual consistent speed at the canter.
So if you had a horse in for training, example, and this horse tended to want to accelerate constantly, and you were trying to get it, like Jeremy said, on the buckle at each gait, how would you educate a horse to say, actually, buddy, you can do it this way?
It's mainly repetition and then correcting the horse and then praising it when it's doing correctly. That's all it comes down to.
Correcting, would you mean change of gait, circle or something, and then start again?
Pick up your reins, pick up contact, sit deep, slow down. And really with the consistency, like the first week, it's not going to be an instant thing, especially if the horse has had seasons of this issue. But, first week, you might be just accelerating the whole time, and you just have to keep doing half fault, keep correcting. By week 2, they're usually starting to get it. By week 3, they will understand what we're asking, if they're really bad.
Yeah, and I think it would be a more pleasant ride for the horse and the rider to just be able to be on that looser rein and not pull through the whole thing.
Definitely a lot less sore if your horse isn't water skiing you down the trail the whole time.
So Jeremy, I was wondering, physical training, I hear that you ran around 20 miles Tevis this year. What is your physical training like, and how do you deal with electrolytes, avoiding cramps, things like that? I mean, the famous pickle juice. Do you drink pickle juice, or what do you do to keep yourself going?
Yeah, so as I've gotten older, I definitely have to take way more electrolytes than when I was younger. I did run ultras through my 20s and 30s. I haven't done it in quite a while, mainly because just for lack of time. Yeah, I take electrolytes. I drink a lot of pickle juice. Tevis is pretty much the only ride nowadays that I actually train physically for myself to get ready for. You know, I've seen posts where people, it's not fair because Jeremy can run this many miles. Well, you tried, but also I'm competing against typically women that I'm giving up 30 to 40 pounds. And some of them, like or 2 or 3 of the top 10, I would say I'm giving up 50, 60 pounds. I did a little bit this year, but not necessarily dieted. I just ate healthier, and then with the extreme amount of training and shearing I did, I lost a lot of weight coming up into the event this year. So I still, at my lightest that I usually am, I was still giving up 30, 40, maybe a couple of guys I was 50, 60 pounds lighter than. That's with my fat. So I have to make it up somehow, and I found that way by running a lot of the big downhills, and then hiking out of the canyons, I feel helps a lot for my horse. But I know that time is coming to an end because it gets harder a little harder every year to get fit for it, and I'm just not as fast as I once was. But I like the challenge.
Yeah. Well, my family, we're not like big football fans or any fan of any sport, but we do like to watch the ultra documentaries and stuff. So we're kind of Courtney DeWalter fans. If we were fans of any sports person, it's kind of her. And I think she did amazing out there this year too. She did it in like 15 hours or something.
We were there watching her cross the finish line. That was pretty
exciting.
exciting.
Did you? Oh, that is so cool.
For sure.
And she was just so bright and cheerful. She looked amazing.
Up until, I can't remember the stat, but until like 2010 or 2011, she would have won every Western States up until that point.
With her time
this year, yeah. Yeah, she's amazing.
She is amazing.
But she talks about the pain cave, and I bet you that's when she's in those moments of like how David Goggins thinks about it. So I think they all have good places. And I was fortunate to run for a brief moment at one time when I was pacing a gentleman for Badwater, and it was when David Goggins just started running ultras, and he was definitely inspiring out there in his ripped T-shirt and shorts with no, bells and whistles of all the other guys around, and he was just, grunting it out with his toughness, mental toughness. But
yeah, I admire both of them for different reasons. Like Courtney, she's like you mentioned skiing. She had started skiing, and that's the coach that taught her about the pain cave, and then the versatility of her to just go, I'm going to try running, and fail, and then like, I'm actually going to do this and do it, and then just blast onto the scene. And then Goggins was like, just like you said, he kicked his own butt, and made this huge transformation just because he wanted to be a SEAL, and any person, could have easily given up. He failed so many times. So I think I admire both of them for different reasons, because he's kind of the epitome of, if you fail, did you really want it? And get back up and do it again. I mean, because how many times did he go through the SEAL training, so that, inspirational for different reasons. And I think that's why I like any kind of like ultra or endurance theme, is because it kind of matches the perseverance that you need in life, because life knocks you down so many times, that having people that push through endurance for any sport, it is kind of an example of, you can pick yourself back up and get going again. And I think that's kind of what I like about that. So back to the horses as we're starting to wrap up here, because we have listeners of every level. We have brand new people who just learned the word endurance, or we have people who have been riding for a long time, and we have some people that are retired and just still interested in listening. I had a question about taper. So do you work taper into your training? So as you're coming up to your main event that you're training for, like Tevis, do you and how do you work if you do, how do you work tapering your horse so that they're peaked at that time?
Yeah, we definitely do. Yeah,
that's a 3-week taper usually.
Yeah,
and we'll reduce the workload starting 3 weeks out.
We don't really taper for 50s because we're using 50s as training rides, but we do taper for our 100s by 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then with taper comes tapering feed and making sure with the workload matches the feed so that you don't have problems with tie up and such like that.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a great article to add into the Endurance News magazine, because I think not everybody's always familiar with what tapering is. If you had somebody who is brand new to that term, could you just describe what that would be?
Yeah, you're basically getting the horse all the way ramped up on fitness, and then the taper, you're reducing the workload to make sure the horse is fully rested and recovered by the time of your event. So in those 3 weeks, you're not losing fitness, you're just gaining rest and hopefully repairing any little soft tissue traumas that have happened, little micro tears perhaps. Because it's very common, especially these big races, that you arrive at the starting line, not common for us, but common in general, that the horse arrives tired at the starting line.
Yeah. And if you were to look at on a graph, you would, the graph increases and you're climbing like a mountain in the graph. And then that last 3 weeks, instead of some people just like stop completely, which that graph would mean it go up a mountain and then it would just drop off where they dropped off a cliff, where you definitely don't want to do that, but you want that really gradual, slow line to come down to race day. Yeah, to race day, and you're still exercising them like a normal schedule. You're just, the intensity is way down and the miles are way down. And then again, depending on your horse's body score and how much you're actually exercising, your feet has to match too as well.
Mm-hmm. You know? So a typical mileage week in that 3 week period would be how many miles?
Maybe 12 to 15 total.
Full week. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not including if you're using exercise and walking. Mm-hmm. But you want to taper some of that miles in walking, but on how much they're on the walker, but that's actually riding miles on their back. So,
but like for the Tevis horses, about 12 to 15 per week for the last couple weeks.
So speak to as we wrap up, this will be my last set of questions. And thank you so much for your time and congrats. I mean, as a husband and wife team, top 10 again is amazing, first. And you kind of bookended it with 9th and first. That's awesome. So speak to the person who just heard from their friend what endurance is and LDs, and they would like to work on bringing their horse who's only putzed around a couple hours a week. They would like to bring that horse up to 25s and 50s. What should they do? Should they be working that horse every day at 8 miles an hour? What should they be doing?
We don't usually work horses consecutive days. Mm-hmm. It's rare. And,
like a generic schedule, when I coach people, let's just say very generically, Tuesday, Thursday, and one of the weekend days. Those are the days you're going to be riding.
And anywhere from 8 to 12 miles, and maybe a longer one on the weekend if you haven't done events anywhere like 25s or 50s. If you haven't done those kind of events within a couple months, then you might want to do a 20-ish mile long workout on the weekend. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. And then very little more to do the 50. Just you want to just slow down a little bit for your pacing for the event, the actual event, than what you were doing at home. Mm-hmm. So the training, it should be a little bit more difficult in speed than what the event is.
Because I see a lot of questions out there in endurance groups where somebody's brand new and then they have their fitness app and they're like, all right, I'm going to go out for this many miles and I have to maintain this pace the whole time. And I just think, wow, if that horse has never done that, going to be some huffing and puffing and possibly, like you said, injury.
I looked at ultra running because I did ultra running to learn more about what the horse's physiology is going through, just to kind of compare them. Of course, a horse is because of their ability to kind of blood dope themselves and their amount of testosterone they run, they're like superhuman. Mm-hmm. So they do still go through the same similar physiological stuff. And I learned it's time on your feet. So just getting out there and being out there for the hours, is the most important benefit thing, and being consistent with it so that you're not, riding one hard ride and then you're not going to touch them for a week or so. That makes you really sore, and it really gives you more risk for injuries. So it's about consistency. If you can't get out there a long time, it doesn't matter. Just get out there often. So that's the biggest thing I would say is just get out there, every other day. And even if you don't have an hour, 30 minutes is better than nothing. 45 minutes is better than if you didn't have an hour and a half. So just get out there. It doesn't matter what you do. Just get moving and be consistent with it.
I think I've heard Jeff Galloway. He's a marathoner. He's in his 70s and he still does a marathon a month. And he said exactly pretty much what you said. Even like on the long run days, he's told people, you know what, if it's a 20-mile long run day for you, but you can't run it, walk it. And he said exactly what you said, which was his time on the feet, the loading and the time on the feet mattered. And I've heard people come back and say to him time and again, is like, it really worked. They thought they wouldn't have
Also being really flexible with your scheduling. Like, you can't just write it down on paper and do exactly what's said on the paper, because the horse is a living thing too, and he might wake up and be like, yeah, I'm not on board for that plan today. So you have to be flexible too to adjust based on what your horse tells you that day.
Yeah, like for instance, like Treasure takes about 2.5 miles to warm up. And if it takes her 3 miles or 3.5 miles, I'm not going to do what my goal, what I had for plan for the day. I'm going to back it down, and because she's not recovered from the last workout. So it's being adaptive and never being
honest with what your horse is telling you.
Yeah, and really listening to him. And you can use the aids like GPS to am I feeling they feel different? What's my speed and my perceived effort? Is it the same or is it slower? And if you think they feel stiff, or they just look more into it. What if it's just a little saddle fit problem, or hey, I didn't notice there was a cut and a little swelling on the leg, and it took an extra half a mile for that swelling to come out, and that's what the problem was. And that wouldn't mess you up. But then what if it's something else that you could have just looked over the legs and whatnot?
Yeah, and horses don't lie. So if your horse is always some way and the next day he's not, and then you say, oh, he's being lazy today. He's never been lazy before. He's not being lazy. There's probably something else going on.
Yeah, so, but just be your horse's partner just like you were yourself. And try not to make it. Some people get just too much into excuses, but get out there and get moving. That's the most important thing.
This was not a question I necessarily had. It was a question somebody sent to me, but I think it probably gets asked often when people see somebody be successful. And it was, what kind of saddles Jeremy using? What kind of saddles Jeremy using? But I think you partly addressed it already, because you said your horses' backs are different because you developed them up that way. But if you'd like to, you can address it. If not, we can just cut this part out.
The saddle that Treasure prefers in the mountains is an old Wintec that I've taken all the flocking out of and used panels on it. And so it's kind of like a hybrid. There's a friend trying to help me copy and make something similar to what I like to use. So it'll come soon. We use a Hyperion saddle. We use an HBA saddle. We use liver sages, reactor panels. Every horse is different.
One of them went in ghost.
Yeah, one of them went in ghost. We're not really, whatever that we notice works the best, we'll go with. And sometimes it's not always the most comfortable for the rider. We just have to get used to it. It's most important for the horse. And we own a lot of saddles. And
we haven't found the answer, like one saddle that fits all the time.
Yeah, we're not. And depending on courses, like Treasure can go in the crazy lightweight carbon fiber tree when I'm going really fast overseas. You can on flat races, but I cannot train much in it, and I cannot use it for a hilly course. So I have to use something that spreads the load better and a little different. So it's always keeping that open mind, and not that one saddle is going to fit for all. So that's what we and one of the big things I see a lot of atrophying behind withers, and where the muscles start getting
the top of the shoulder behind the wither.
Yeah, and they'll start getting bulbous over the scapula. Well, And oh, that's muscle development. Well, no, you push the muscle from behind the scapula, and now it's pushed up on top of the scapula, and you're actually atrophied behind, and you're actually leveraging and the saddle's being stopped by that scapula. So I'm usually a big proponent of saddles with panels. So yeah, and sometimes I have to put two different types of saddles together with some Velcro or some zip ties, but it's just what it is. And yeah, so it's being open-minded and seeing, hey, does this look normal? And they can atrophy behind the scapula without getting white hairs. And I see it all the time. And people won't listen to me because they're like, oh, I love this saddle. And that fits perfect. They've never been sore. I'm like, oh, okay, what about this? This is sore. Well, let me show you. And then they kind of ignore it. But I'm just always looking and listening to the horse and telling, and even if it's something I'm like, I can't live without this saddle, I put that aside in my mind and listen to them and adapt it. Yeah.
And I see that because I think we're all that way. If we got into photography, for example, when you get into photography, you want to get, look into the cameras and what's the better camera and which lens should I buy? And people have that genuine excitement when they come into endurance. And I've seen people who may have a Western saddle that fits their horse the best, but they don't want to look out of place at an endurance ride. So they're quickly, what kind of gear should I get? And I always say, what fits your horse the best? So if it's a Western and it fits your horse the best, go with that, unless, of course, you're trying to win the Tevis and you need something light and you need both. But,
there are light versions of Western saddles that just won't have a horn, but they fit similar, and there's so many different brands out there. But and I have my favorites, but sometimes my favorites don't work for the horse, or that horse and myself might not match up, but someone else is doing just great with it. But so I always keep an open mind about every piece of gear and thinking outside the box. Like Treasure uses a tiny little 1-inch girth with one buckle because her girth groove, the way her elbow comes into her girth groove with her big rib cage, it pushes up into that armpit. So I have to use like a tiny little girth. And when I'm racing fast on flats, I'm actually using elastic racing girth
from the flat track.
And from the flat track. And it's not, well, I did ride in Tevis 2 years ago on it, but this year I found a friend of mine made a one buckle mohair girth.
Pam from Untamed Tech.
Yeah, she made a perfect one for me that fits in that girth groove, and it's just a one buckle. And that's what I have to re-rig my saddle, just to use that one buckle, and it fits her, and she doesn't get rubbed. And so it's just like looking at things and seeing how they fit, and just be adaptive.
And I really love your answer to the saddle fit question because it is complicated. And like Heather alluded to, there's no one brand fits all. There is no, because every horse's back is different, and and the needs, like you said, flat versus mountainous is different. So I hope somebody gets some pretty good information from the horsemanship tips that you've shared with us. And I want to thank you for sharing your time with me. I know you guys just have had such a busy couple of weeks here. Before we go, can you recap your business services in case somebody wants to contact you, and your best website? I know you already said your website before, but just add it at the end, and I'll put it in the show notes also.
Okay, yes, reynoldsracing.us. And there's a way to contact through the website. And then Heather's Facebook page is another very easy way to contact us on Messenger. Yeah.
And so basically what we do is we have horses for lease for individual events, mainly Tevis. This winter, we're going to have horses for lease for the whole winter period, which would be late October through early May, where you could come in and do the events with us on those horses.
But if it's working out and we have someone that commits the whole year, there's no reason why that horse couldn't be leased all the way through Tevis.
Yeah. So there's some there where then they could do half the year in Florida, half the year in California. Have some variety. We do the clinics, the 3-day clinics during the winter months in Florida. And I do remote coaching over the phone, which is a once a week phone call. And we go over everything endurance, lay out a whole plan for you and your horse, and troubleshoot and design programs.
And then we also do like 1-2 hour consults just to fix some holes and someone questions about electrolytes or whatnot. We'll do simple things like that where it's just one call, and then I do some farrier consultation stuff, and so we do a little bit of everything and try to help people.
We also go overseas and give clinics too, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, we try to make those little vacations. Yeah, those are fun.
So basically, if you have anything you need in endurance, I'm sure we can accommodate.
Yeah. We're pretty adaptive, and we just like to have fun and help people. And our actual ultimate goal is for people to have as much fun as we have going down the trail and just in the sport in general. And we do that with our clients, and I truly, like, even though I like to win or whatever, we don't hold anything back. We teach all our secrets. It doesn't matter. We just want people to have as much fun as we have.
At the risk of being slightly corny, I will say that you both are a treasure to the endurance world, and I hope you write a book someday, and that it's fitting that you are writing a horse named Treasure for that reason.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
We enjoyed having you along for the ride. Endurance Horse Podcast is where you get to share your adventures of riding good horses through beautiful country. Many stresses in life are washed away by a good gallop, a steady trot, or by simply saddling up your favourite horse for an easy ride. Remember, every mile a memory.